Bernard here from Doc29 Marketing. Welcome to the 11 a.m. Monday morning marketing webcast. I am your host, Chris Bernard. I hope you're doing absolutely stupendous and your weekend was fabulous. It is an important note personally to take time off and build into your family, build into yourself. So a little tip for you on a personal level before we get started. This topic is something that we continually struggle with time and time again from a creative standpoint, especially if your product is maybe not all that, shall we say, sexy, interesting. Maybe you have limited product types or industries that you're kind of going after. Things can get a little stale. So we fall into this problem where we're trying to be creative and engaging in something that we've seen like 1.5 billion times, right? But maybe our clients or our prospects have not yet. So today's topic, campaign performance lagging, ? Breakthrough performance requires a great creative process. So we are going to be going over what that is for us today. Maybe you have an incredibly talented team that you already work with. However, things are kind of looking the same, right? That's what tends to happen over time, right? Or the second scenario is maybe you have stepped into a role where the team isn't as creative as you'd like to be, but you like them. And obviously you don't want to be transitioning a lot of people in and out, removing them, laying them off, firing them because they don't fit the mold just yet. You say, you know what? I can salvage them. I know that we can save this. They're a good group. And I fall into this philosophy, right? They're a good group. They've got some skills, and we can just kind of work them into a better process, right? So that'd be like that second scenario. The third scenario is you're doing everything yourself. And I think most small businesses or startup businesses have been there, and they're like, I am not creative. Like, how the heck am I supposed to do this? Well, we're gonna give you some tools so no matter which one of those scenarios fits you. Little hint on the third one, fake it. Pretend you have a creative team, but it's still your job to manage that creative team in a way that is helpful and beneficial to them. So without further ado, you need a good creative process. So let's talk about that for just a minute. We're going to give you some tools. We're going to give you some tips. We're going to give you some techniques that are going to allow you to be successful with that. With the current team that you have, whether awesome or it's got some skills and we need, we can do stuff, or I'm doing this myself. I'm going to fake like I have a creative team in order to do this right. Okay. So the creative process before we begin, and we've talked about this before. Hopefully, I think this one's good. So this is the background stuff, right? Hopefully, you have done your due diligence. I don't care if you're the C-level top brass marketing guy or even the president or owner of the company, you have thought about some certain things. Now, I'm not suggesting that every company needs to do a market plan, but every company needs to do a market plan of some way, shape, or form. In fact, we actually do if you need help with this, we can help you kind of guide you through this process. But we've boiled down one of those big $15,000, $20,000 market plans with all the research and all the data done, about $2,500 program we call pregame. But the core of pregame is just that, the core elements of what a typical market plan looks like without all the other fluff. Okay? So you really should have a market plan or a pregame analysis that before you start game time. You've done a competitive analysis, so you have an understanding, or you've looked at the data, recently been procured, so you know where you kind of fall in regard to yourself as it relates to your competitors, unique value propositions, things that are important to your customers and your competitors' customers, right? Figure out what's interesting there, why you're so much better than them. And that includes like the unique value proposition, the positioning statement, and then what's really interesting is even just the sales, like go talk to salespeople or go talk to the sales department and try to understand what's working and what's not. You may not have done this in a while. This can be a gold mine of information. In many cases, just requires us to walk down the hallway and talk to somebody else. But a lot of times we get kind of caught in these ruckuses. So even after like a market plan has been done, we get caught in this is the way this always is. and maybe that market plan was done 2 or 3 years ago. It's still good, and I'll justify myself not walking myself down there to either confirm or change things up a little bit in terms of what the actual real-time sales information is. So what's working, what's not, what are trends, all that kind of basic stuff for your sales. Whoever your sales specialist, remember, sales are the lifeblood of any company, right? So you need to make sure we're in queue with that. And then I know it's logical, right? That marketing persona, that target customer, and that might be a B2B company, and that somebody in a B2B, business to business, or it might be a B2C, might be selling directly to consumers. Sometimes it's both, okay? So that's the background, right? So this is this information, like do your research, okay? I just covered that, all those things. Now we're ready to get started on a creative process. Now that we've flipped through that binder, we've saw the summary data and the executive information, we've seen kind of where we fit in position. Now we're ready to engage in this activity. And creative people don't typically look at those documents, which is kind of interesting, which is why you're helping them in this situation. Because a lot of times the creative people are really creative, but we try to draw a box on them, they get frustrated because we're drawing a box around them. And to be quite frank with you, a lot of times that box that we've created them, we either need to be okay, and we'll work you through an exercise here. We're either okay with kind of boxing them in and forcing them in that, or we're just gonna let them run ragged and we don't really know how to guide them, right, in the way that would be helpful. And certainly being able to spice up, right, our programs and our campaigns. So think about that thing, think about that stuff. So first step, beyond the research, beyond that basic stuff, we need to establish goals. So after you kind of did that, you know, and this exercise could be a day, it could be a couple of days or whatever it is, but you know, maybe even up to a week, kind of here's and there's kind of thing going on. Sometimes you need to noodle on stuff, right? So establish your goals. I know that sounds so simple, right? But here's the phraseology that I'd like you to be able to use. Right at the top of this blank Word document or whatever the case may be, write, I want someone who sees this to feel or experience, fill in the blank. That's it right there. That's what I want. Okay. Why? Because you've just done this basic kind of guideline research for yourself. You've now thinking about the person you're targeting, and now you're conceptually at a place where he or she is at, and you want them to feel or experience a certain thing. So again, the first step, establish the goal. I want someone who sees this to feel or experience, fill in the blank. Okay? Now that you got that written, and that could be a little bit of time, to be quite frank with you. Run that across some people. The next part of the equation is parameters and scope. Params and scope. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Okay. Do I tell you now or wait? Okay. So this might be done. No, let's just go with this right now. We'll kind of wrap itself back around here and just go with this. So the second part is that parameters and scope. Now, what do I mean by that? All right. The creative brief, the first pass. I'm going to show you, in fact, let's just pull it up. The creative brief. Screen one. Wow, that's not the creative brief. That's the brand questions. Perfect document for you, by the way. If this is a new brand, it's a little bit more in depth. Okay. And it can be used. In fact, I probably should pull up the one that we've just done. But great questions, right? These are big picture questions for brand name. If you're creating a new brand, a logo, and things like that. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's go to the creative brief. Creative brief looks like this. In case you guys haven't ever experienced one, many agencies use something like this. This would often be filled out by somebody who knows what's going on, like a manager. This might be the account manager, you know, if it's Delta Airlines or one of those guys. You know, we will, you know, if I'm the lead on the creative team at the agency, I'm going to be submitting this to my creative designer. I'm going to be filling this out, and giving him or her guidelines, right, in order to do this. So just basic things, right, that are normal in terms of the product. But then background info, objectives, what key elements are required, target audience, again, who are we talking to? What do they currently think and feel? This is kind of, see how this is kind of working you through the process that you just went through, but you're putting it in a very short, concise way for a creative team to go ahead and process and be creative, okay? What do we need them to feel and to think, right? How do we bridge the gap, right? How are we actually getting them from not knowing or not being able to take action to something that is taking action? How do we do that? What's the tease? What is the single-minded proposition? What are we offering in terms of value? Support for the single-minded position. So give me some justifications for that, all right? Call to action if it's required. Tone of voice, that can be sad, frustrated, angry. That could be happy, that could be joy, that could be serious, right? If you're a bank. So, you know, many cases when you talk about tone of voice, one of the things that helps me here is if I can actually visualize like the actual, the execution itself, and I can actually pretend it's a television commercial, right? We've all seen television commercials with the right voice when it's applied to a commercial, and ones that basically kind of like, for whatever reason, they're just kind of away, right? But if we've identified a lot of these other things, we're going to identify it's a female voice or a male voice. We're going to identify what the pitch and the cadence and the tone is, the speed of which somebody executes something, the emphasis that they put on their words. All of that is kind of in that statement, okay? That voice, when you get it in your head as to which one it is, that's what you need to fill out, okay? Media details, is it being on TV, radio, newspaper, what's the deal? Other reference items, idea platform. So this might be different styles, competitors. This might be textures, colors. This might be patterns and background. This might be images, right? Attitudes and themes. And then brand guidelines, mandatory. So, you know, the logo, that has to be this way. These colors have to be these specific, either Pantone colors or RGB colors or whatever the case may be. You're setting those expectations in here as well. So, and then timings, approvals, all that fun stuff. But this is a great, real quick summary document that we pass on to creative teams to go ahead and execute those elements that we want to see. Now, it kind of led you to an understanding here that if you're doing brand, you'll see it's important if you're taking kind of a side step to this. If you're doing a new brand, you have to think about a lot more elements right out of the gate. So that's where a document like this, beyond a campaign. So let's separate the two things, right? So what we're talking about is primarily campaign stuff, right? But if we're going ahead and creating a brand new brand, right? A new division of, or whatever the case may be, a new company, work through this document. I have both linked in the show notes, or I will in just a few minutes. But really great to be able to think about these very large picture kind of aspects, right? And then you can move on to some of the more detail in regard to putting this to the creative team. Typically, we would not give this to a creative team. One, it's a little more than what they need. Two, we want to keep them exceedingly focused. Now, there are elements in here that will show up in that creative brief. There will be responses to this that will show up in this creative brief. No two ways about it. But going through this exercise for a brand development project allows me to summarize in this creative brief for that creative team, right? So we're leveraging their creative, and they're not trying to figure out what I mean, or maybe there's even, to be quite frank with you, sometimes there's like contradictory stuff when we work clients through this. Like, so do you want to be serious or playful? Is this blue a little too serious, or is it too playful? You know, those corners, I mean, how fun do we want to make this? Are they really sharp in terms of the corners of, let's say, a button, or are they more rounded and fun, right? In terms of text and styles, we want the brand to feel formal, but we're targeting people that are fun, right, and engaging. Let's say this is a child project or something of that nature. So in many cases, you can help clean that up. I hope that makes some sense. One document I want to show you is this is one of the brand questions for a client of ours that's basically sells these grow home mushroom kits, not the magic mushrooms, like kids kits and stuff like that. So you can build a lot of this stuff. You can create a lot of this stuff apparently with mushrooms. If it's indoors, especially like in Florida, the humidity is an issue, and indoor temperatures and stuff like that. You need a grow kit, and there's grow kits like this, but they're targeting again, it's supposed to be fun, kind of fun for families, fun, home, and easy. So like in this case here, this kind of word picture starts, and the fonts kind of come about. Even the logo is kind of like whimsical and stuff like that. But this document right here generated that creative brief for the team. And heck, let me just show you. I know you're seeing all the clients here. That's fine. Here, let's shut that off for a sec. So you can come back to me. Hang on one second. All right. So that essentially that creative, that brand development question. Let's see. Turned into the creative brief for the team, and that became so they get it up. This brand. Now, believe it or not, they had another brand that was actually it was actually very like technical. Let's see if I can go grab it. Actually, it's not live. Yeah, it's not live, and I don't want to show you. So that became this brand based on the brand questions that were answered, right, through a discussion. And then the creative brief, which gives us, the design team the ability to go ahead and mock something up that looked great. Kind of a font that's fun and engaging yet clean. It even kind of capitalizes on some of the, the length, like the vertical length. It's not it's a little bit taller of a font. You see where I'm trying to go with this in terms of creative? It's a taller font, which, kind of speaks to the growing of the mushrooms, and even how like the T's, everything's kind of pushed up a little bit, right, in terms of just the font design. So I kind of like it in this kind of experience of joy, obviously the mushrooms, because you're growing stuff, right? So kind of cool stuff going on there. So that is the second step, right, is to go ahead and do, colors, feel. You may want to look at like media comparisons, likes and dislikes, textures and things like that kind of fit into that. Now, what I just said a few moments ago is you could, the next step of this, let me just show you, all right? So that's this. The next step is the exploration. And I'll go through this first with you. So exploration. So this is where, remember, you have just started to kind of fill this out, okay? So you've done your goals. You say, I want them to feel, right? You've done either your brand questions and then filled out first time the creative brief, okay? And the reason why we do that now and move on then to exploration, where we're looking at now, we're bringing in additional information and insight, okay? The reason why we filled out, we'll do that creative. Oh man, I'm losing my markers here. The reason why we do the creative brief here as an optional thing, okay, is because if we want a narrower selection of the box that we draw for our creative team, if we want that to be smaller based on our research and things like that, it's important to do this step, okay, this scope first here, and to fill out that creative brief before we start doing exploration, because it narrows that box. But if we want our team to just literally kind of go we want bigger ideas. We want that box to be a little bit bigger for them, right? We want some crazy ideas that maybe we hadn't thought of. Okay, we don't want necessarily this to pigeonhole us as much as it relates to this step. So we won't even fill this out. We'll skip this step if we want a bigger box, right? We'll just skip it. So we don't want a small box, we want a bigger box. For our creative team, we will skip this step and move right to exploration after we've done our goals. And what we're going to be doing there is we're going to be doing Google searches, right? So we'll use things like you can just go to Google. You can do your search for images, right? Another area is competition. You can look at other sites that are out there. You can look at videos that they've done. You can do searches against competitive terms or your terms in Google and see what's going on there. That can really bring ideas into your scope that you hadn't thought of. Okay, and if you need to figure out how to get to Google search images, you probably do it already. Let's go ahead and share screen again. I should just automatically just do screen one. That's what I should be doing. So if we do that, I'm just going to slide this over. We just go to Google, and let's say it's let's start on that mushroom, the grow kit. So like kids home projects. I'll do something like that. Okay. So I can use just normal Google search, and I can kind of get an idea in terms of textures and fun and kind of, interesting fonts and colors and all that stuff. But I can also go ahead and click images, and I can just see different things going on, right? Different executions, different styles. Some that jump out at me. Some other ones not so much so. I see like rainbows. I see this is big. It's kind of cool. Brings my attention in. I see different colors. I see different display-like units. So I'm getting an idea. I'm getting ideas that are kind of out there, and I'll then do another search or query for kids home kit projects or something of that nature. And I'm starting to see slightly different kind of executions and operations. I may even start to see images like of kids actually doing the stuff. Oh, here's one with kids actually like focused intently on a project. So now, here's one with a dad and a child. Interesting. Do I show you what we're working on for them? So like in this case here, knowing that we're a little bit further in this other project, we use the same exact process to get the basic homepage rotator for that mushroom company. It's essentially mushrooms in the background. It's got a very precious moment between a smiling daughter and a mom kind of looking at that actually looking at the unique value proposition, believe it or not, in the and the rotator. So it looks great, but that came out of that creative style, that creative brief. So that was kind of cool. So that's another area. Oh, Shutterstock. So if you need help, sometimes even if you don't have a Shutterstock account or even typically we'd want to buy the images that we're doing here. But let's say I'm going to do like kids home project kits. Just kids. I'll do kids projects. That might come up. See, look at all the fun images. So even things like that. Look at all those great images that we can use in terms of colors and styles and layouts and things like that from a creative aspect that are really engaging. And feel free to, don't worry about, going to footage. And these are videos that are there. You can take stills of, this is one we just used recently. For a zoo, which was interesting. But a real precious moment. That's, again, when we talk about, remember the first question, right? I want them to feel, right, certain things. So, this was a zoo for, basically health for a woman. That's the industry that they kind of play in, and we're talking moms who have like leg pain and stuff like that. So really trying to evoke a sense of emotion and things like that. So those are areas that we typically use, and even like textures and things like that. So going back to images, you could even use like background, like gray. And there'll be like a ton of different opportunities. I'm not a salesperson for Shutterstock, but this is the process that we use on a regular basis. So, even just just take these little styles here, very, kind of maybe contemporary. You've got some more grit going on. You can almost smell the concrete and cement. If you want to actually rotate that might be a cool product feature. Like even that right there too. So these are similar in terms of style. A little more elegant feel. A little more, let's say, tech edgy kind of thing. Definitely like cosmetic-ish going on here. This would be kind of cool to transition this way, and this could rotate the other way. Maybe product feature. This there's a whole bunch. You can see where you could see a whole bunch of different attitudes. Then you get the black, right? Oh, huge different attitude with that. I'm picturing like sport, protein powder. Boom, the powder kind of, just the smoke kind of coming about, or potentially a product launch, right, with flashing bulbs around the product, that kind of thing. So just really kind of cool ideas that you can launch in terms of an exercise in your head. So that would be step 2 in that process. Let's go turn this stinker off here. Stop sharing, and we're going to go back here. So that would be exploration, okay? Now, as I mentioned before, I have a brand new blue marker over there. As I mentioned before, you can skip this step. So you got goals, you've got either your first pass at the creative brief and brand, right? So the brand questions and creative brief potentially, or you may just skip that and go right on down to exploration, depending on how big you want that box. Number 4 is going to be, again, since now we're ready for the parameters and the scope, either this might be the first time we've seen this, if we skip this step, or this might be the second time we've seen it, based again on how big we want that box in terms of our creative feel. Now we're ready to do our creative brief and submit it to the client, submit to the creative team in order to get what we want to out of that, because we've done our due diligence here, okay? And that last step is it goes to the creative team. Now, this might be an outsourced party. You might use a design firm for this. You might use Fiverr for this. They now have something they can use, that creative brief. It'll be tremendously helpful in terms of design, okay? Because it's got all the elements of research and thought process built into it, and it makes it very easy for them in one document to be able to go ahead and execute some designs for us. Now, again, whether that's our own internal team, whether that is an outsourced team, or whether you're buying it kind of, like I said, on a Fiverr or one of these other companies to go do that, exceedingly helpful. Let them do the creative stuff. In fact, we've used even like Fiverr before ourselves, and I'll do this whole process there, and I'll do a creative brief, and I won't send it to just 1 or 2, but I'll send it to 3 or 4 different Fiverr designers based on, because I've done this creative brief, I have an idea as to the style, quote unquote, that I'm kind of looking for. I might submit it to 3 different designers, pay them $30 to $40, right, in order to get 2 or 3 different designs from each one of them. And then I have, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different designs that I like, and I can evaluate that against the creative brief. And usually after a simple massage of one of those or 2 of those, we usually come up with a winner. So I hope that helps you guys. The process is pretty straightforward. It's, again, after you've done your background research, you set your goals. Remember, I want someone who sees this to feel or experience. You can either do the first pass at a creative brief, potentially with the brand questions, and then the creative brief. But that creative brief, you don't have to, if you want that box to be bigger, you can simply move on to exploration. Exploration is where you're doing all that research with Shutterstock and Google Images, the search, competitors, trying to get that textures and the file, the font design and all of that stuff kind of played out in your head, at least kind of scoped out in terms of attitude, then you evaluate either for the first time or the second time the parameters and the scope, right? And you actually finalize the creative brief so that you can then send it to the creative team. Okay? So I hope that helps you. We go through this process every time we do creative. Whether that's an internal team or whether we're outsourcing the creative to somebody else. I hope that helps you. Join us next week for the 11 a.m. Monday morning marketing webcast. I am your host, Chris Bernard. Have a great, great week, and we will see you next